You spend hours shooting photos and weeks avoiding the edit. Does that sound familiar? Well, I'm there too. If your editing workflow takes longer than your actual shoot, then you're probably doing something wrong. Today, I'm walking you through the workflow that keeps my creative work moving forward, even when my product management job tries to eat every spare minute I have. Let's start with why editing feels so overwhelming. It's not because you're bad at it, so let's get that out of the way. It's because most tutorials teach you to edit like you have infinite time and zero other responsibility. They show you spending 15 minutes on a single image, tweaking every slider until it's gallery-ready perfection. That approach works great when you're editing, let's say, 10 photos. But when you come back from a shoot with 300 images and a full-time job waiting for you tomorrow, that math gets brutal real fast. 300 photos at 15 minutes each equals 75 hours. So you will need to quit your job just to finish editing that last weekend's shoot. The reality is that most creatives struggle with time management, and a massive chunk of that time isn't spent creating. It's actually spent on post-production, editing, workflow management, that kind of stuff. And by the way, if you're new here, I'm Cesar. I balance product management with photography, and by doing that, I know the struggle of finding time for creative work. I share the systems and workflows that actually work for busy professionals. So we're bleeding hours into the process and not the actual craft. And the deeper issue is that we're treating every single image like it deserves equal attention, when the truth is, most of them don't. So the real question is not how to edit faster, it's how to build a system that makes speed the default and not the exception. And that starts with understanding something most people get backwards. So write this down. Editing doesn't begin when you open Lightroom. It actually begins the moment you press the shutter, or even before. Which brings us to part 2. Here's where most people lose time. Decision fatigue during editing. You sit down, you open a photo, and then spend 3 minutes just figuring out where to start. Should you fix the exposure first? Crop, color grade? Every image becomes a blank canvas with infinite possibilities, and your brain burns energy on decisions that you should have made before you even imported the file. The solution? Front load your decisions before you shoot. Before I pick up my camera, I ask myself 3 questions. What is the intended mood? What is the color palette? And what is the final output? If I'm shooting for a warm golden hour vibe, then I'm thinking already about my white balance settings in camera. And by the way, white balance may not even be as important as you think. So go check out this video about the most important settings that you should be actually spending time on. On the other hand, if I know that these photos are going on Instagram, then I'm framing with a square crop or a vertical 4x5 in mind. These are actually guardrails that save me from wasting too much time in post. Also, this part actually saves hours. I shoot with a consistent exposure strategy, which again I explained in the video that I made over here, so you can check it out later. And I'm not talking about nailing exposure perfectly in camera every single time. That's just simply unrealistic. I'm actually talking about keeping my images within a predictable range. If I know my exposures are consistently one stop under, I can batch correct that in 10 seconds across 100 pictures, for example. If every image is randomly exposed because I kept changing my settings, then I'm stuck fixing them one by one, and that's not where you want to be. Decision fatigue is real, and it compounds throughout the day. Every creative decision that you push to the editing phase becomes harder to make when you're already mentally exhausted from work. The photographers and creators who move the fastest aren't necessarily the most talented at editing. They are just making fewer decisions during the editing phase because they already made them during the shoot. Now on to part 3. Alright, so you go back from the shoot. Now you got your files, and this is where people make their first massive mistake. They import everything into Lightroom and start editing without culling. Don't do this. If you edit before you cull, you're actually spending time on photos that you're never gonna use. And I'm not talking about the obvious rejects like the accidental floor shots. I'm actually talking about the 17 nearly identical frames where your subject blinked once in one and smiled slightly better in the other one, and you convince yourself that you need to edit all of them just to compare. You don't. So here's my culling system. I take 2 seconds per image max, and I use my editing software rating mode. The first pass is flag anything that's obviously bad. Closed eyes, terrible focus, blown highlights that can be saved, for example. Delete or reject. The second pass would be to pick the single best frame from every burst or similar sequence. Not the top 3, the top 1. If I shot 10 variations of the same pose, I'm keeping just 1. Maybe 2 if they're actually very different, but most of the cases, just 1. In one of the latest updates, Adobe actually updated Lightroom to help with this part of the process, so if you're up to date with Lightroom, you probably also use this feature to help the process. And if you're curious about the specifics of my workflow, I also made a video about it, and you can check it out over here. All of this may feel too final, too harsh at first, but you're actually never going back to edit those runner-up shots anyway. They're just clutter. And if your workflow is anything like mine, then you will still have those photos to go back to at any moment. You're just taking them out away for now because you already have backups of the pictures. After culling, I'm usually left with about 10 to 15% of what I actually shot, and that's completely normal. If you shot 300 images and you're just keeping 30, then you're probably doing it right. Those 30 pictures are the ones worth your editing time. And now we edit, but not the way you think. Most people open their first photo and start tweaking right away. Bad move. That's serial editing and it's the slowest possible approach. Instead, we're going batch first. So here's how it works. Step 1 is pick a hero image. This is the single best photo from the shoot, or at least it's the one that's representative of the overall look that you're going for. Edit this one fully. Exposure, contrast, color grading, sharpening, noise reduction, the whole shebang. Get it exactly where you want it because this is your template. Step 2 would be to sync the settings across similar images. Editing software nowadays lets you copy and paste developed settings or sync adjustments across multiple photos all at once. So take your hero edit and apply it to every single shot in the same light conditions. If you shot in 3 different locations with 3 different light setups, then you probably have 3 hero shots. That is still better than 300. Step 3 will be to spot fix what's broken. So after syncing, some images will need some tweaks. Maybe one is slightly underexposed or the subject's face needs a little bit more brightening. That's fine, but you're not re-editing the whole thing from scratch. That's the whole point. You're just making micro adjustments to an already 90% finished image. This approach is based on the Pareto principle I talked about in the video over here, which is also known as the 80-20 rule. In editing terms, 80% of your final looks comes from 20% of the adjustments, and your hero edit handles that 80%. The spot fixes are just polishing that last 20. You're not spending equal time on every single image because they don't need equal time. So let's actually talk about the stuff that you're doing manually that you absolutely shouldn't be. If you're applying the same lens correction to every single image, stop. Create an import preset that does it automatically. And if you're sharpening every export in the exact same way, also stop. What you can do is also build an export preset with your sharpening settings just baked in. And if you're resizing for Instagram every single time, guess what? Also stop. Save the dimensions and resolution also as a preset. Modern editing software like DxO, Photolab 9, and Lightroom let you automate almost everything that's repetitive, and most people just don't use it. I have an import preset for every camera and lens combination I use regularly. I also have some export presets as well. I've also developed presets for common scenarios. These aren't just Instagram filter presets that turn everything into teal and orange. These are actually functional starting points that handle the boring technical stuff so that I can focus on the creative decisions. Keep in mind though that building these presets will actually take time up front. Maybe an hour or 2 to dial them down and save them properly. But the point is that that hour pays for itself after 3 or 4 editing sessions. It's one of those investments that feel like procrastinating, but it's actually high-level productivity. There's a concept in software development called dry. Don't repeat yourself. Every time you write the same code twice, then you should turn it into a reusable function. The same logic applies to editing for me. Every time you make the same adjustment twice, then you should turn it into a preset or a template. Your future self will actually thank you. So drop a comment if you've ever had a backlog of unedited pictures just sitting there for months. I want to know if I'm not the only one. And if you've tried batch editing before, let me know what worked for you and what didn't. If this workflow made sense for you, hit the like button. It helps more people find systems like this instead of just another tutorial on how to use the HSL sliders for 20 minutes. So let's bring this together. If editing feels like a never-ending time sink, it's not because you're slow, or maybe not only because of that. It's because you're working without a system. Front load your decisions before you shoot, cull ruthlessly before you edit, build a batch first workflow that prioritizes the 80% over perfecting every pixel, and automate or templatize everything that's repetitive. It's all about cutting waste. The photos that you actually care about will still get the attention they deserve, but the process around them won't bleed hours you don't have. In the past, I've also made some tools in order to help with this, and you can find them on my website, which is linked in the description. And most of them are for free, so check them out, download them, and give me your feedback. If you're serious about making time for your creative work without letting it consume your life, then subscribe to this channel, because every video is built around systems that work for people that don't have unlimited time, because honestly, most of us don't. Thanks for watching, and now go clear that editing backlog. Bye!